Okay guys, we are going to talk about lesson 2.3, and in this lesson you're going to be looking at real life situations that apply the linear functions that you've been working on. So we've been working on using this equation, and you're going to be using this a lot in problems 2.3. So when you are doing these problems, sometimes you are not going to use y and x. Let me show you some examples of that. So in this first problem about this Treetop Fun company that you're going to be talking about, they charge customers $25 for every time they do their service. And it's asking you to write an equation that relates I to N. So I is the income based on how many customers they have. So it's $25 per customer, gives them a total amount of income or money that they get to receive for their company. So in that case, you have an I and an N. You're going to use I and N or N and I, whichever way you think is best in this equation. So these two variables may become other letters, but you will still have variables there. So you could either have an I here, and was it an N here, or you can have an N here and an I here. And then in that case, you would want actual numbers for those two spots right there. Remember that sometimes though, if your equation doesn't start with an amount of money to begin with, then this would be 0. If it is 0, you don't have to actually write plus 0. You can just leave it off completely if you choose to. So in question number 1, it's $25 per person. You calculate that to find out the total income. So you decide which of these two versions of the equation that you think is best for question number 1 for Treetop Fun Business. Okay, question number 2 changes a little bit. In this case, they have $500 that they have to spend per day creating all of their things they need for the business, things like electricity, paying their employees, things like that. So that is what it means by operating cost. So they start off with $500 a day. After that, they're going to use the same equation here that was used for A1. So for an A1, you used one of these two choices. Whichever one you choose here, you're going to substitute it in for 2. So let me talk a little bit more about profit and loss and things like that, because these are terms that you are not expected to know yet. So just in general, not specific for this question, profit is made when you take the income a business makes and you subtract the expenses. So let me talk through what those mean. Profit is how much money the business makes that they get to have like in their pockets. It's the amount of money they get to keep. Income is how much money they bring in from their like customers. So in the example up here, they talked about income because it's how much money their customers are paying them. Your income, you only get to keep the money, the amount of money after you have paid all of your bills. And your bills and things that you have to pay are expenses.
Bradley Daskus, report to the bus doors. Bradley Daskus to the bus doors, please.
Sorry, we're still having announcements. Profit is equal to income minus expenses. So you found income up here. This was problem 1. Whatever you found for income for problem 1, you're going to use that information to add into this equation. So this chunk of an equation gets put in the spot where the I goes, and then the P and the E part, P, and it talks about operating cost, and that's expenses. That's your E amount here. So you're going to use some of the data that you had from problem 1 in problem 2 using the profits equals income minus expense kind of equation. Okay. Question number 3, this same company bought a rope bridge, which sounds really cool. I would love to climb across that rope bridge. they paid this price, $4,500 for that rope bridge, and they are going to continually take off $350 every month for paying off the bridge. So they're going to take $4,500. That's how much they owe at the very beginning. And then every month they're going to take off $350. So after 1 month, their total cost that they still owe, which they're calling B for balance. So their balance is equal to, after the first month, whatever 4,500 minus 350 would be. And then after 2 months, you would subtract another 350, and you would keep doing that forever. If it asked you the price for a specific month, you could calculate it that way. But instead, you're going to think about this process and write it as an equation using the variables B and M for monthly payments. So we don't know how many months are being used. Instead, we're just going to use the variable M in that problem. Okay, so that is all the parts of A for 2.3. You're also going to be completing B for 2.3. So for B, it's asking you to look at this chart and then explain how you know the relationship between the admission fee for a group and the number of people in the group is linear. So you're going to be looking in this chart, look for patterns that you see. Remember, you know something is linear if it's a very predictable pattern and it's either increasing or decreasing by a specific amount. So show what pattern of change you see in this table, and that will be your answer for B1. Okay, for B2, it wants to know the slope and the y-intercept. Well, remember, slope is the same as the pattern of change. So it asked you to find patterns of change for 1. Now it's asking you to write that as a number for slope. So those are similar. And the y-intercept, as you remember from a previous video, the y-intercept is when x value is equal to 0. That tells you whatever the y value is, then tells you the intercept. So 0 is not given to you in this table. So you have to think about the pattern of change you're seeing and figure out what 0's matching number in the y category would be. Okay. And then it wants you to use the information that you gathered in 1 and 2, mostly in 2. Use their variables A and N in the same slope-intercept form equation that we've been using. So use this again for question B3. Okay, the last one you're going to be doing is C. For question C, it's asking you to look at the line of best fit that they've drawn in this table, and you're only looking at that line. Now, some of the dots are not on the line, and that's okay. It's just they put the best line they could that covered most of the data. So only looking at the pink line, what is the slope, what is the y-intercept, and what is the equation of this linear model of this graph. So find the slope, you can count it, or you can use 2 of the dots if you prefer. There's a good dot there and a really good dot there. This dot seems a little tiny bit under the line. So use 2 dots to find slope, or you can count slope. You can see the y-intercept right here, and then use that to write your equation. So you are completing lesson 2.3 for this, and it's a real-world application of your linear functions that you've been working on.